If you find yourself in a difficult situation and you want to get your head around this situation and how it's made up, and you want to be able to come up with actions on how you can deal with it, we do a triangle. And you need to do this on the floor. You get post-its, you get 3 post-its. You name the post-its, 1, 2, 3, and you put them in a big triangle. You stand in position 1, looking at position 2. And position 1 is you yourself, me in the moment. Position 2 is the situation. And then in position 3 is the... So this is a way of you seeing the problem you're dealing with from different perspectives.
Muhami Matters with Chris Adams, powered by CJA Consulting.
Hello, welcome to Muhami Matters, where credibility meets clarity in legal and professional services. I'm your host, Chris Adams, founder of Muhami and CJA Consulting. Today we're talking about something that sits underneath business development, underneath leadership, and even underneath client trust: confidence. Not confidence like performance or bravado, but the internal kind that allows professionals to show up clearly in uncertainty and in difficult conversations. My guest today is Maria Newman, a coach and speaker who helps professionals reconnect with who they are and silence the inner critic that often holds them back. Welcome to Muhami Matters, Maria.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
I really appreciate you coming along. So for those who haven't met you before, tell us a little bit about you, where you live, where you're from, and how you've gotten to where you are today professionally.
Wow. So who I am is Maria Newman. I am married with 2 children and I live in it's usually sunny Bristol, whereas today it's a bit grey and grim. As an individual, I love listening to Audible books, and I'm currently listening to Wayne Dyer's Wishes Fulfilled, which is an amazing book. I highly recommend it to everybody, and I actually listen to it at twice the speed because it means I focus on what I'm doing and it distracts me from running, which is what I'm doing when I'm usually listening. I also love cooking, love eating food, love talking about food, and just before Christmas I got my 2nd Dan black belt in kickboxing martial arts, so that probably gives you an idea as to who I am and what I'm about. When it comes to what I do now, it has been an organically evolving thing. So I took voluntary redundancy from Rolls-Royce back in 2016, and I never anticipated at that time setting up my own business. My thought process was, I'm going to look for a company that aligns more with the fact that, I'm a mum and at the time had 2 young children. However, I went ahead and did some work with a coach. And one of the first questions she asked me was, well, Maria, what would you really like to do? And without even thinking about it, my immediate unconscious response was, I'd love to have my own business. And yet I don't have an idea as to what I would do, because I didn't want to do project management, which is what I was doing in Rolls-Royce. And so over the course of working with her, that led me, first of all, to create my first business called Fill That Space, which was about promoting local Bristol artists and making art accessible to everybody, as opposed to the reputation it's got, which is you have to be rich in order to have nice art. And so during this journey, I'm also blogging as Mummy on a Break on Facebook, because I was a mum seemingly on a break. And I quickly realised that actually being in business supporting artists wasn't the thing that I was supposed to be doing. It was helping women similar to myself get to where they wanted to go. That was the seed that started to be planted at that point, let's say. So I thought, well, how am I going to help? What can I do? Because I didn't have any coaching qualifications. And I thought, well, I know what I'll do. Because I'm a mum, I know that our time is very limited, and being able to access help isn't necessarily consistent. I'll create this course, I'll put it online, and then mums can access it whenever they have the time. And that's what I did, Chris. I lovingly poured in all this energy and time into creating a course that would help women. And I released it into the world in 2020. Can you remember what happened in 2020?
The dreaded C word.
The dreaded C word. Anyway, slightly before that happened, I released it into the world. And unlike the film Field of Dreams, starring Kevin Costner, where he's told, build it and they will come, I published it. I got tumbleweeds. Nobody came. Lockdown happens, and I'm thinking, I need to do something, because we can't live on air. We need money to survive. And I was thinking, well, what do I do? What skills have I got to share with people? And at the time, I'd been podcasting for about 8 months. So I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm going to teach people how to podcast. I'll make it really easy. I'll set up a 1-hour interactive workshop. People can come along to that 1 hour, and by the end of it, they'll be able to podcast. And that's exactly what I did. Like many people, never having used Zoom before and never having run a workshop. And that got me on my road to creating a business which I could deliver and where I actually had clients. And over the course of it, there was like this nagging feeling of, I want to help people on a one-to-one basis. I want to be a coach. I want to be able to help people in their personal development. And through my work providing different workshops, so it started with the podcasting workshop, and it then went to, I was delivering one on how to make money from your superpower, how to master your mindset. Through that, and by taking qualifications, so I'm an NLP Master Practitioner now, I was then able to create a coaching program that supports people in dealing with the challenges that are stopping them from moving forward. And that could be they've had a dip in their confidence. It could be that they're finding themselves in an awkward, difficult situation. It might be that they need to have a conversation with someone and they've been putting it off. Whatever the thing is that is their current challenge, problem that they need to face in order to feel like life is now moving on.
So that's really interesting, Maria. You've come on quite a journey in less than 6 years, really more like 5 years. Why do you think the website didn't work? Because I thought you have a captive audience. If everyone's locked at home and can't do much, I thought that would be where people would absolutely go.
I think at that point, to be completely honest with you, because everybody was in lockdown, I think it became, in a bizarre way, really noisy online. And I know now we battle to get space and be heard. I really felt that I was battling with a lot. So, and I was very new to it as well. You know, I wasn't quite sure about marketing and being visible. So I think a lot of it might have been for my own wanting. I wanted to put this thing out there and I wanted everybody to jump on it. And obviously we know, being in business, there is no such thing as an overnight success. It just doesn't happen. So some of it may have just been my own impatience, which I know is something that I work on regularly, for something to be successful immediately, as opposed to you put it out there and then you have to work at it and make sure that you are in front of the right people and you are talking about it until it feels like you've been talking about it so much people are fed up of it.
Yeah, okay. So did that knock your confidence, the fact that you didn't get, a win straight away, or didn't get, got the tumbleweed?
Yeah, it did knock my confidence. And I think for a long time there was, and still now, there's a little bit of me that reminds me of what's happened, and that means that I hesitate and I question things. Whereas the best way to learn is to have a go and see what happens, because we learn from, I always say, failure is success in disguise, because it tells you what works and what needs tweaking. Because in totality, a bit of it will have been okay. It just wasn't quite right. So there is no such thing as failure. It's just success in disguise.
And maybe the timing just wasn't quite right. Maybe today it would be an absolute success. So maybe Mummy on a Break will make a big comeback after this podcast. You never know.
Maybe.
Well, it sounds like you're pretty happy doing what you're doing now, and you found your calling, as they say. So we're going to talk a bit about confidence today. It's something you work on a lot with the clients that you deal with. So I think for most professionals, which are a lot of the listeners to this podcast and those watching us, we think of confidence as being external, something you convey and portray, and it's about your voice, it's about your presence, I guess, in the room. But you, from our conversation we had the other day, you were saying confidence, Chris, it's not an external thing, it's actually internal. Tell us a bit more about what you mean.
So before I answer that question, I'm actually going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Okay, so think about a situation where you are really confident. Tell me how you're feeling and what you're saying to yourself.
I don't think I'm saying much at all. I think I'm just not thinking about it, just doing. So I'm not thinking, just doing, I think, is when I'm really confident.
Now let's take a situation where you are not confident. How do you feel in that moment? What thoughts are popping into your head?
There's a lot of questioning. You're questioning yourself, questioning, is this the right way to do it? Or should I do it this way? There's a million thoughts going around and you're just not sure. Quite a lot of being unsure.
So if you are certain of yourself and you know what you're going to deliver and the thoughts popping into your head are serving you and supporting you, externally, you will present yourself as a confident individual. That's why it's really important to actually do the inner work, because how we present ourselves starts from the inside. And you've just highlighted it. You've said, well, if you're confident in a situation, you're not even thinking about it. You just go do. Whereas when you feel uncertain and you're feeling like you're lacking confidence, it's because inside the thoughts popping into your head are actually allowing that to happen. They're saying, oh, do you know what you're doing? Is this the right thing? Do you know what you're talking about? Are they going to go along with you? So everything starts from the inside in order for you to project this confident person outside. And for me, it's really simple. It starts with knowing, liking and trusting yourself, which sounds really familiar because from a business point of view, we talk about taking our customers or our potential customers along the know, like, trust and ladder. So that's got to start with you first. Do you really know yourself? Do you know what you're all about? Do you know your values? Because in knowing yourself, you can then start to like yourself. And then when you like yourself, you can start to trust yourself. It's like putting on an invisible cloak of confidence. And this invisible cloak protects you from anything that's coming at you that may make you feel uncertain, awkward, uncomfortable, because you're comfortable in your own skin. And that, for me, is a big part of being confident. If you are comfortable as yourself, if you know yourself, if you are comfortable with what you stand for and the way you live your life, then stuff coming at you that you may not be aware of or might not hit in a nice way is more likely to rebound off you, because you know who you are and you trust your judgments. So that, for me, creating that, let's call it a foundation, is where it all starts from.
So the know is the foundation.
The know is foundation, then you build on it from there. I know myself.
You build the trust.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to trust your instincts, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Trust your instincts, trust your judgment, trust the decisions that you're making. So that is the start of the inner work. Know, like, trust.
So I guess the obvious question is, where did you start? How do you know yourself? What do you need to do to know yourself?
So there are a couple of things you can do here. Some clients find one more awkward than the other because you have to spend time with yourself.
Okay.
And you can do it two ways. Number one, you can take yourself on a day date so that there's no distractions, because when you're away from home, you can't be distracted by, if you work at home, you can't be distracted by your work. You can't be distracted by stuff in the house. So you take yourself away somewhere and you have an honest conversation with yourself. You know, what do you like in life? What lights you up? What makes you smile? What are you interested in? What are your values? Values are really important because they are what guide us in life. And you know if you're acting in accordance with your values because everything feels fine. It's not what it looks like, it feels fine. If you are acting not in accordance with your values, that's when you start to get like that, maybe not a nice feeling in the pit of your stomach, or maybe, you know, your throat starts to hurt because you can't get your words out because you're not in alignment with your values. So knowing your values is really, really important. And it's not like having like this long list of what are my values. Find out your 3 important values. So for me, integrity is one of my values and it's a key value for me. I've worked this out over many years. So find out what your values are, because that will then determine the decisions you make and the judgments you make, and the way you behave will be influenced by your values. So it's all about getting to know yourself in the same way as, you know, when you meet someone for the first time and you want to get to know them, what would you do? What questions would you ask them? You do the same for yourself. And, you know, as we go through life, because we have many different experiences and we take on many different roles, and especially for women who become mums, and to be honest with you, men who become dads, you start losing yourself in the, I'm a mum, so who am I? Or I'm a business owner, so who am I? You know, these roles start to muddy the waters.
Okay. So it's a bit about identity, knowing your own identity. So the day date you're talking about, what's a good day date? How do you get yourself in that frame of mind, that relaxed frame of mind where you can work through, you know, thinking about, so I guess self-reflecting, what are my values and whatever the next step is. Do I need a checklist from you? Do I need to go to a pool day or something, sit by a pool and have a checklist from Maria saying, okay, now think about your values, or now think about whatever's next?
I think in life we have a tendency to want to cling to something that says, I'm doing this right.
Yes.
The right way of doing it is according to how you want to do it. So I go back to what I said a minute ago. If you are going to get to know somebody else, what questions would you ask them? Ask them the same questions of yourself. And as far as where would you go, you take yourself to a place where you feel safe, where you feel relaxed, where you allow yourself to let down the shutters and contemplate the activity that you've given yourself. So some people, it might be, well, I'm just going to take myself to the park and just sit there on the park bench and ask myself the question. Some people might say, well, do you know what? I'm going to take myself on a day date and I'm going to go to a restaurant. So where do you feel safe and comfortable, where you can spend the time to ask yourself some questions? What up to you.
I think I would definitely not feel comfortable sitting in a restaurant talking to myself, asking myself, how are you today, Chris? What do you think? What are your values? What are your values?
You don't have to ask the questions out loud.
Yeah.
Yes, because, you might get some strange looks.
Oh, well, I guess if you don't mind, then it's all about confidence, right? So
there's the start of it. It's the test. But let's take one step at a time.
Okay, so the first step is to take yourself away from your usual routine, to take yourself to the park and sit on the park bench, or out in the wilderness somewhere, or on the beach, or wherever you feel peaceful. I'm guessing probably where there's not a lot of other stimulation around, where you're able to reflect. So you ask yourself what your values are. What else do you need to ask yourself?
So what are you interested in? What makes you laugh? What makes you cry? What makes you angry? What makes you sad? You know, really dig into those emotions to get to know yourself as much as possible. What hobbies do you like? Because, you know, we forget about the hobbies we used to have as children and why we liked those hobbies. And it might be that, you know, you're actually a really creative person. However, over the course of your life, because of life, you have no creativity in your life anymore. And that's actually something that makes you feel good and makes you feel like it's a way of refilling your cup.
Mm-hmm. So you're really giving yourself some space, some mental space, I guess maybe even some physical space, just to relax, have these thoughts and get back to basics. So that makes sense to me. I think I'll struggle to do it, but it makes sense. Okay, so
I'm going to challenge you now, Chris. Every time we meet, I might just, you know, Chris, have you gone on a day date?
Yeah. I'll probably say, no, Maria, I haven't got time for a day date. What are you talking about? Okay, so out of that, the no begins to take place. You've had a chance to reflect. Do you need to do anything with that? Do you need to sort of transition along to the like, or is it how do you get comfortable?
See, I love that. That's a normal human thing. Do I need to do something? It's about being something. So rather than we want to take action. We don't feel like we progress unless we take action. And believe me, you know, I am one of those people who wants to take action, wants to move things forward, when actually it's about being that person. You now know yourself. You need to practice being. And I did mention earlier that there's an awkward thing that you can do, or a thing that a lot of my clients find is a bit awkward. It's the mirror activity, where you literally stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself. And the first things you do is you pick out all the nice things that you see in the mirror. I mean, you know, my clients have a tendency to first of all be attracted to all the things they don't like. We're not doing that. Start with the things you like about yourself. Might be, this is a bizarre one, it might be the shape of your eyebrows or the way you smile. Whatever it is, start to like what you look like, because that is something potentially that can hold you back when you want to be confident. So you need to like what you look like. So that's tangible. And then you can start thinking about the intangible things that you like about yourself. And that can be people come to you when they're trying to solve a problem that they haven't been able to solve themselves, or you can easily make people laugh, or people come to you for advice. Whatever it is, your attributes, your qualities that you like about yourself. So you're starting to know yourself. We're now moving into the realms of also liking yourself.
Okay, so you've spent some mirror time. I think this sounds like it would be an ongoing process. As you say, it's something that just has to happen, right? So it's something that, you know, you would probably start knowing yourself, and then you'd go and you'd do activities, and you sort of need to make sure you just went back and are constantly thinking about this and reassuring yourself and just reflecting on it, I guess. And same with the like is, you know, it's not just, I do a day of it and then this is done. It's something you've got to continually do. And I guess until you learn the behavior, until you know, it's by default to say, I know I like myself. I know this is what I'm strong at. I know this is what I'm maybe not so strong at, but the strengths overcome the weaknesses.
Yeah, because over time, repetition means that it automatically becomes part of our autopilot. So it is all about repetition. And the world changes, things happen. We're in constant change as opposed to standing still. So it is an ongoing thing to to practice continually, just to make sure that from an internal point of view, you are happy with the way things are because you are comfortable in your own skin.
And what about trust then? Where does the trust come in?
The more you get to know and like yourself, the more likely it is that you will trust your instincts. You'll lessen doubting yourself. And then as you build momentum in making a decision and knowing that decision was the right one, then again, the trust will become more and more and more. It's, you're building momentum, you're practicing. I want to just keep it really simple.
Yeah. Keep it really simple. That old KISS acronym, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Or use the clean version. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about it's not an external point of view. Confidence is not an external thing. It is actually comes from you. Where do you most commonly see a lack of confidence? Where do professional people kind of crack and break and kind of lose confidence?
I think it comes from a number of places. For myself, as an example, I know going from the corporate world, for example, into the business world, I went from being a really confident project manager to a really uncertain business owner. And that is because from a inner critic perspective, I call her Vera because I know that she's not me. And I encourage everybody to name the inner critic because the inner critic is not you. So Vera, my inner critic, she's a lovely old lady. I've given her a persona because the inner critic is neither good nor bad. The inner critic is just doing its job, which is to keep you safe. So it doesn't want you to fail, to fall over, to make a mistake, to look foolish. So it will try to stop you, to protect you from putting yourself in that type of situation. So for me, the lovely Vera was saying to me when I entered the business world, well, this is new for you. You know nothing. You're starting from ground zero. Everybody else knows what they're doing. You don't know what you're doing. And for a little while, or probably for a long while, I was listening to her because, well, she's sort of right. This is new. I haven't run a business before. There are people who I'm meeting who have been doing it a lot longer. What Vera had forgotten was I did have a career before becoming a business owner. I was really successful. And there are lots of transferable skills from what I was doing to what I was doing in that moment. So for me and for many others, going from the corporate world into the business owner world can see you feel like you're lacking confidence. It's also, when you get rejected from something, your confidence takes a bit of a drop. When you do something which you think is going to be okay and it turns out in a different way, your confidence takes a bit of a drop. And actually, the thing that contributes to that is your inner critic. Because if you spoke to yourself in the same way that your best friend would speak to you in those instances, they wouldn't be saying what your inner critic is saying to you. So self-awareness is really, really important. I'm going to correct myself. What is your inner critic saying to you that is not helping you, that is adding fuel to that fire of, they're just knocking my confidence? And in those situations, the advice I give to everybody is you need to develop the skill of reframing what's being said in your head. Because if you can reframe those thoughts in a way that feels natural, then you can start to undo the stories that you're telling yourself that is slowly chipping away at your confidence.
So how do you go about doing that? Is this something, again, that you, I guess, I'm assuming you work with your clients on this. This is probably one of the key things you would work with. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so you're working, I guess, on techniques and exercises that could help them to sort of quieten down that inner critic or fight that inner critic off.
So you need to be very careful. Your inner critic, we don't want to quieten your inner critic, because all that'll happen is they'll come back louder the next time. So remembering the point I made earlier, your inner critic is neither good nor bad. They're just there keeping you safe. They're just there going, you sure you want to do this? Is this the right thing? Just double checking with you that the next thing you're about to do is in your best interest. What you do next, you have control over. So I said about being self-aware and really hearing what they're saying and capturing what the inner critic is saying and then flipping it around. So I don't want to get all like mega positive and say, for example, you hate making sales calls because as far as you're concerned, every time you make a sales call, the person on the other end, A, you don't think are really listening to you, and B, are going to say no to you. So as far as you're concerned, the story you're telling yourself is, I hate making sales calls because I always get rejected. That seems fair enough. You need to start repeating to yourself something that makes sales calls feel less awkward and gives you more confidence to pick up the phone. Something that you will believe. Because if I said to you, Chris, if you were an individual who hates making a sales call and I said, oh, that's all right, Chris, every time you go and make a sales call, all I want you to say to yourself is, I'm going to get a sale from this call. Inside, you'd probably be going, yeah, I'm saying it out loud, but internally I'm going, no, I'm not.
Yeah, and you're pretty setting yourself up for failure potentially.
Yeah.
And you're going to disappoint yourself. If you don't get the sale, you're going to disappoint yourself.
Yeah. So you might get to a point where actually you can say to yourself, I'm going to make a sale from this call. Let's take baby steps so that you can get yourself to that point. So the first thing I would suggest is that the client comes up with what their reframe is. And they might say something like, I'm going to ring this person and tell them how I help. And if they're ready to buy, they will. It's not a big thing we've made. Everything I've said is true. And you could buy into that, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. It's achievable.
And that's what a reframe needs to be. It needs to switch the story in such a way that it actually gives you the motivation to do the thing, as opposed to listening to your inner critic who is telling you, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And it's the same with things like talks, you know. I quite happily will do a 7-minute spotlight talk at Circle. I've had a little bit of practice and I know what to expect. There are some people who might not have done their first one yet and they'll be thinking, oh no, I couldn't do a 7-minute. Who wants to listen to what I've got to say? They'll switch off for 7 minutes. So let me save them those 7 minutes that they'll never get back and I won't talk in the first place. I mean, that's not helpful, is it?
No, not at all.
So instead, you need to think, okay, then I'm going to be brave. I want to step outside my comfort zone and I want to deliver a 7-minute. What can I say to myself to change the narrative that I've been continuously like bombarding myself with? I'm going to talk for 7 minutes on a subject that I'm passionate about, and those people that are interested will listen and hear me. And
it works. Love it. I mean, it's all in your head, isn't it? It's your decision, and the way you interpret it is up to you. No one else can influence that. Well, if they do try and influence it, then you have to be strong enough to say, oh, well, doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that's why, remember, we talked about your invisible shield, your invisible armour. You've done the inner work to start with. You're comfortable with yourself. This is the next level. You're now dealing with those thoughts that might seek to take you off course. So that's the next practice. So yeah, it's like be comfortable with yourself. The next bit is your awareness of what's going on in your brain.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about that.
So something that's really, really powerful is, and I did a spotlight on this last week, every situation you find yourself in is neutral until you give it meaning. And that meaning either comes from the words you're saying out loud or the thoughts that pop into your head. Because it's the meaning you give to a situation that determines how you feel, and how you feel about a situation determines how you show up and the actions you take, which then lead to the experience you have.
Right.
And this is all starting from your brain. So an example that a regular example I always give, because it's an easy one. If I'm in a room giving a talk and all of a sudden I say to the audience, once I finish this talk, I'm going to pick on one of you to stand up for 5 minutes and just talk about yourself for 5 minutes. You'll get some people hearing those words going, that sounds amazing. I'd love to stand up there for 5 minutes and talk about myself so that people can get to know me. That would be a great opportunity. And as a result, they're feeling really happy, excited, motivated. And so they're showing up, they're probably sitting upright on their chair, making eye contact with me, hoping that, I see that they're making eye contact because obviously they want this opportunity. And as a result, that person gets the opportunity. Now, exactly the same situation. You might be like, let's call him Bob. Bob hears me say those words and he thinks,
Uh-oh.
that sounds awful.
Don't look at me.
Why would I want that opportunity? Why would I want people to look at me for 5 minutes? Why would anybody listen to what I have to say for 5 minutes? And he'd be feeling really nervous. He'd be feeling really awkward and uncomfortable. And he'd probably be slowly sinking into his chair, hoping that I don't pick on him. And I'm a nice person. I wouldn't put anybody in a situation that they weren't ready for. So I wouldn't pick him. So as I've just demonstrated, exactly the same situation. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to talk about yourself. Some people will give meaning to that situation, which is nice and positive. Other people will give a meaning to that situation, which is negative. And it all starts from how you think about that situation. And that's the same as, you've done all the inner work to be confident and you're about to step into a new situation or an uncertain situation. What are you telling yourself before you go into that situation? Because what you tell yourself, the meaning that you attach to that situation will ultimately determine the experience you have and therefore the outcome you get from that situation. Really, really simple.
So what motivates people then? Because in that situation where you're sitting in that room, I guess some will think, okay, this is an opportunity, whether it's as you said, it could be a personal opportunity because they want people to know them. I guess it could be a business opportunity because they might think, okay, now I get to talk about what I do. And I'm in a room full of 49 other, investors or people who might be able to collaborate with me. So this is a great opportunity. Then you've got to fight that inner critic, I guess, or that inner voice saying, nah, it doesn't really matter. I should do it, but I don't know. So I guess people must have different motivations. What motivations help people to be confident?
Do you know what? It's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is just that in the moment reaction to what's going on. Responding is about taking a breath and saying, what do I want to do in this situation? And I think that's the motivation. You're either just going to have that gut reaction, which could be positive or negative, and it just takes you along the path that it ultimately leads to, or you can practice thinking, okay, then when something happens, when I'm presented with something, I'm going to take a breath first, and then I'm going to determine what is best for me. So in that moment, you might think, I know this is a really good opportunity. I'm just not ready. It's just too overwhelming at this moment for me to handle it. And do you know what? That is okay. Or in that moment where something is big for you, you might think, I know this is something new. I'm just going to be brave and I'm going to do it because ultimately this is the best thing for me. Whatever happens after I say yes is what needs to happen. And it's again, talking to yourself in a way that serves you.
I can see where the reframing definitely comes in, and definitely, where that plays the most important part. So can you give us some examples, I guess, of maybe people you've worked with or observations you've made where people have come really lacking confidence and then have left working with you or have helped themselves to gain that confidence and had some success?
So I had a lovely virtual assistant come to me, and she was really lacking in confidence. She was really good at what she did, and she was confident in what she did. She wasn't confident in talking about her business, which, from a British perspective, we're not confident at talking about ourselves because our business most of the time is us. And she'd feel uncomfortable, say, when she had to do her 60-second pitch. The thought of just for 60 seconds, people listening to her made her feel really uncomfortable. And we did some work. We talked about reframing. We talked about doing the inner work and the practice. And I got a lovely testimonial from her where she said, it was in two parts, actually. It was a one-to-one networking meeting she'd gone to after we'd finished our work together. And she said, I easily stood up and delivered my 60-second pitch. And not only that, people then came to see me afterwards, wanting to connect, and I was easily able to talk about my business and describe what I do and how I help. So this is an individual who, she's an introvert as well, which doesn't necessarily help. And she went from really not wanting to deliver a 60-second pitch to, because she could stand up, deliver her 60-second pitch, people were attracted to her and they wanted to speak to her afterwards. I mean, that's what you want.
It's like they say, going back to dating, it's like they always say that women like a confident man. It reminds me a little bit of that. Or, maybe it's even men like a confident woman as well. It is that you are attracted, I guess, to people from a business sense and a personal sense who exude confidence. Naturally, I think it's an attraction.
Yeah. And you've got to think, when you're looking to buy a service, we're all in the business world. Are you going to go to someone who sits there and goes, well, I provide web services. I know how to create a website. They're all right. Or are you going to go and speak to the person who says, I create beautiful websites for people that naturally attract clients, and those clients work with you forever? It's the difference between who you're going to go for. Who do you have confidence in?
So I guess that second person's probably going to have some kind of natural confidence, but they might also have just practiced their sales speech a lot, or practiced knowing the ins and outs of what they do over and over and over again and have it down pat. or I guess they could just love what they do. All these three things must contribute.
Could be. It could be all of those. And as you were talking, it just reminded me, if you think about babies learning to walk, if they gave up the first time they tried, none of us would be walking now. Whereas a baby doesn't really care what's going on out there. They're like, right, I'm going to walk. This is what I'm doing. And they try and try and try until they can walk. For some reason, as we get older, because as we progress through life, there are different stages of life. So, for example, from 0 to 7, we just absorb everything. From, I think, 7 till about 12, we're then, we've got a place in the world and we're trying to figure out sort of where we fit. And then I think it's from about 13 to 18-ish, we're then worried about what everybody else thinks of us. And then obviously in adulthood, we're definitely concerned about, what Jenny down the road is doing and what Bob round the corner thinks about what we've just done. So, but a baby doesn't care. A baby's like, this is my goal. My goal is to walk. I will walk. And there's, parents and adults around them probably having a little bit of a giggle, not being horrible to the baby, but, when you watch your child titter and then fall over, it is funny. The baby doesn't care, though. The baby's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm walking. And that's what, as adults, children can teach us so much. As adults, yes, we're going to get things wrong. We're going to fall over. Does it matter? Probably not.
It's a really interesting point, actually. Yeah, because they're just determined. Those babies are determined, and they feel that inner desire to do it. It's probably fun. It hurts when you fall down, although if you're wearing a nappy, it probably doesn't hurt too much. But, it hurts when you fall down. But you get back up again, you keep trying. And it's quite interesting what you say, that we lose that as we get older and older and older. And perhaps until some point where you just don't really care as much anymore what other people think, and you just do it. So the conversation we've had today is led, I guess, around the inner confidence and, having that inner confidence that ensures that you carry yourself in a confident way and you can achieve what you want to achieve. But there's obviously external factors, people that can knock us down, negativity, criticism. How do your clients deal with that? How do you teach your clients to deal with that?
I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way. So, probably about 6 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to 4 principles, or they're known as 4 agreements, by a man called Don Miguel. And the 4 principles are: be impeccable with your truth. And that has 2 sides to it. The first side is being able to speak your truth, what you think, and support that with the way you act. So on one hand, I can say, Chris, I really, really believe you. Words coming out, I believe you. But body language or the way I act is, well, I'm not going to do what he's just said. So speaking your truth, meaning it with your whole body. However, the second half of that is the people who are hearing your truth might not be ready to hear it. So it's awareness of the person who's going to be on the other end of what you're saying. So that's the first point. The second point is, don't make assumptions. As humans, we find it very difficult to deal with uncertainty. So what we do is we fill the gap by making assumptions. And the story I always tell is, I've got a really lovely friend. She's amazing. Whenever I text her, she will literally text me immediately back without fail. I literally feel like she's just holding her mobile phone waiting for me to text. Well, there was this one time where I sent her a text and she didn't reply immediately. So that got me thinking. I know what happened. We went out to coffee the other day. I said something and I saw her face drop. I upset her. She doesn't like me anymore. She's not my friend. She hates me. And then a couple of minutes later, I got a response from her. And she said, silly me, I forgot to hit the send button. So I've made an assumption, made this story, got all emotional about it, when actually the fact of the matter was she hadn't responded. That's all it is. The third one is always do your best. So always doing your best looks different depending on how you're feeling and the situations you're in. As a parent, it's not unusual for my children to get me up in the middle of the night, which means maybe when I wake up in the morning, I'm not feeling 100%. So my best, when I've had an interrupted night's sleep, will look different than when I've had a full night's sleep. The same as when you're not very well. So as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, today I did my best. That's it. And the fourth one, I've got this in the wrong order. The fourth one is don't take things personally. And I've actually left this till last on purpose because that's where your question is all about. It doesn't matter what somebody says to you about a thing. They are coming at it from their perspective, from the life that they've led, the experiences that have made them the person they are. So let me give you an example. When you're talking to friends and somebody might say, my daughter's not doing very well at school. In that group, you will all ask a question based on how you see that situation. One person might say to the parent, oh, well, how are you doing? Another person the first question they might think of is, well, how is your daughter? Is there anything that she needs? Another person might say, well, what have the schools said? Is it a school situation? So everybody will see what she said from a different point of view, depending on the experiences that they've had. So the thing we've always got to remember is if somebody criticizes us, they're coming at it from their perspective. It's their stuff that they're dealing with that they've projected onto you. And similarly, and this is the bit that for a long time I wasn't quite sure of, even when somebody praises you and compliments you, it's coming from their perspective. So it's not just in criticism. So if somebody criticizes you, it's not your stuff. It's their stuff. It's got nothing to do with you. It's how they see the situation. It's the filter from which, or the lens from which they view life. So you might, whether you're trying to be more visible on social media to promote your business and you're on TikTok could be a bit Marmite. Somebody might go, oh, well, why are you doing those TikTok videos? That's just for the young kids. Your audience isn't going to be on TikTok. Well, that's coming from their point of view, because as far as they're concerned, TikTok is for young people and only young people will be on TikTok. When actually, in fact, there's a variety of people on TikTok and it's not all about dancing and pointing fingers.
No, there's a lot of opportunity on TikTok. I tell my clients, don't just write off things like TikTok because it's another way to be found. It's another way to convey your message and you control it. You are putting the post up. You're the one who controls what you put up. Be true to yourself. Yeah.
And it's similar when you get a comment that might not be a positive comment. That's not your stuff. They're commenting based from where they sit. It's not about you. It's about them. So again, it can hurt when somebody writes a negative comment saying, you have no idea what you're talking about. However, again, we've done the inner work. You do know what you're talking about. For some reason, they've taken issue with it. is there something in their life where, they found themselves in a situation where actually inside they're going, oh, I'd love to do that, but I don't know what I'm talking about.
So I could definitely see what we've just been talking about, how it applies for professionals. So you need to have, the confidence in yourself in the workplace or in your business. The experience, that you just spoke about. I mean, a client can be very critical of you, for example, but they are often conveying their own frustrations. Maybe it's their frustrations with their own clients, or that, they or hope you could help them with something that they can only do themselves. Something like that, I guess. So it is very interesting to think about it with that lens. It got me thinking as I went along about people I've met recently, people I've dealt with, and what they've said, which you can sometimes take personally or interpret in one way, but it's actually them expressing a frustration or them just dealing with their own internal stuff. I didn't swear there. Their own internal stuff. So I guess the other thing to think about, I guess, in professional environment is instilling confidence in your team. How do you instill confidence in your team? How do you be that either that supportive team member who, grows people and makes people bigger, not smaller? And I guess from a manager's perspective as well, where it's almost your job to encourage them, get the best out of your team. How can you go about that? Or what some ways?
So it's about, as a manager, it's about having the confidence in your team members to help them over time step outside their comfort zone. So we're all like our comfort zone. And just to bust a bit of a myth, a comfort zone doesn't necessarily mean that life is all rosy and wonderful in my little bubble. A comfort zone could be that actually life is a bit grim. However, I know how life functions in this grim comfort zone. I know it. I'd rather be in what I know than step outside into the stuff that I don't know. So there, it's up to you as a manager, as a leader, to help them start to step outside their comfort zone. And that doesn't mean giving them a massive project that overwhelms them in order to, give them a good old elbow out. It means helping them consistently take steps to build momentum that then builds their confidence. So what can they do? A small thing that they can do that they haven't done before that will set them on the journey to taking action one step at a time that helps them to build their confidence. And then obviously, if something happens that means it doesn't quite go in the direction of where you'd hoped it would go, it's not about berating them. That's a learning opportunity. And to catch it there and then, and to sit down and go, okay then, so this didn't quite turn out how we expected. Let's look at the positives. What went well? Because some things will have gone well. So let's, acknowledge that. What didn't quite go well, however, if we would have tweaked it a little bit, would have gone well. And then finally, what is like a no-no? What happened that you think, oh no, now in hindsight, shouldn't have done that? Because remember what we said at the beginning. Failure is success in disguise. So there is success here. It's just, not clear. We have to do a little bit of digging. Let's be an investigator. Let's be a detective. And with that, you'll grow the confidence of your team, because the thing you don't want to do is to stop your team from performing at their best. And if they're scared to do something in case they fail, make a mistake, get it wrong, you're not going to get the best out of them, and they're not going to perform to the best of their ability. They're going to hold back because they don't want to fail. They don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to disappoint themselves. So you need, as the leader, you need to facilitate them being okay with trying something that might test them.
So you need to have confidence in your team. Do you also need to have confidence in yourself then to allow yourself to have confidence in your team?
I think you've got to trust yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to, let's take it back to parenting. Like, as a parent, you're a parent, we could quite easily say to our children that they can't do anything unless we're there. Which, when they're young, is easy. The thing is, at some point, definitely where I am, my children need to walk to school by themselves. So my daughter now in secondary, she walks to school by herself. This year, year 5, my son is in, was the year where I had to let go and say,
scary.
Right, okay, you can walk to school. And I've just got to let go. I know he's capable. I know he's got good self-awareness when he's walking to school, because I've watched him. He's here, he's present. He's not daydreaming. I know he's capable. So I've then got to trust myself, to trust him and let go.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think confidence, parenting is a lot about confidence. Parenting is a lot about trust. All right. Is there such a thing as too much confidence?
Oh, it's a really good question. And I want to say no, because you can be confident and be aware of what's going on. And then I think probably the too confident then becomes more, the word that stuck into my head was then maybe you become a bit arrogant. I don't like that word though. I think then you become complacent.
Yeah, there's a fine line, isn't there, between being arrogant and having confidence?
Yeah. I think, the definition of confidence for me is having the ability to step into situations when they're new and uncertain. And I don't know, maybe the people who are perceived as overconfident, actually, it's a coping mechanism for them not being confident.
Mm.
It's a way of masking the fact that they might not really feel like they're capable or they know what they're doing. Because if you're confident, you don't need to do all that. You can just be you and step into a situation, not having to make a big deal of it, not needing to prove yourself, not needing to compensate for a lack of fill in the blank.
Yeah, and perhaps it goes back to lack of self-awareness as well, which we spoke about much earlier in the episode, where you need to be self-aware, you need to know your limits, but you need to push yourself, and you can push yourself if you have enough confidence.
And maybe even low self-esteem. So I think the perception of someone being overconfident isn't necessarily that person's reality, as in the person who is perceived to be overconfident. Yeah,
no, I think that makes sense. You mentioned earlier NLP, so you're an NLP practitioner. Does NLP explain a little first of what NLP actually is, and then how does it feed into the work you do?
So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and basically it's about how your brain works, as in the messages that come in, what it does with it, and therefore how you then subsequently behave. And it's fascinating because there's so much of it. As I'm trying to string this sentence together and think, okay, then, so where do I start? Where do I start?
It's a big topic. It's a very big topic.
It's a big topic because there's the understanding how people see the world and how people are in the world. There's the massive toolkit of tools you can use to change things in people. Some are really, really simple. So, for example, if you find yourself in a difficult situation and you want to get your head around this situation and how it's made up, and you want to be able to come up with actions on how you can deal with it, we do a triangle. The name of it now has escaped me. It'll come to me at some point. So
triangle sounds better.
You're in a triangle and you need to do this on the floor. So you get Post-its. You get 3 Post-its. You name the Post-its 1, 2, 3, and you put them in a big triangle. You stand in position 1, looking at position 2, and position 1 is you yourself, me in the moment. Position 2 is the situation. So it could just be the situation. So it's not a physical being. It's a situation. It could be a physical being. So if you know that you need to have a difficult conversation, then what you're looking at in position 2 could be that person. And then in position 3 is the independent observer. So this is a way of you seeing the problem you're dealing with from different perspectives. So you stand in position 1, looking at position 2. So position 1 is you, position 2 is the situation, the person, the thing you're dealing with. And you express how you are feeling in this situation, your frustrations, your annoyances, whatever. You then stand in position 2, looking back in position 1. So you're the thing that's apparently the issue, looking back at yourself. And from that position, you have to feel like you're it, looking back at yourself, express what's going on for you. And then you go to position 3, the independent observer. So you've got to shed all the emotions and the baggage, and you look at what you've just heard and you convey how you feel about what you've seen, what you've heard. And then you go back to position 1, now having gathered all that information, and you decide the potential actions that you could take. Now, in doing this exercise, you very much have got to make sure that you're not stuck in your own head.
Yeah.
Because you could be in position 1. Yeah, you could be in position 1 and go, well, I'm obviously right. They're wrong. This is what needs to happen. Okay, be in that. Will that help you? No. So you've got to be willing, and this is why coaching is really important, because as a coach, I facilitate that person going, okay, then, so I'm going to be in these different positions and I'm going to make sure I can see it from those different positions, as opposed to it's just me going from 1, 2 to 3. And I did this with a client, and she found it really useful because she was actually having the position 2 was her son. And she then actually taught her son to do this exercise, and he found it really valuable. She obviously didn't say, I've done this with Maria because you've annoyed me. Yeah. It was just because that would be nice. She actually taught him this tool so that if he finds himself in a situation or with a person that he's not particularly happy with, he can then do something for himself. So, NLP gives us as coaches, as individuals, tools from which we can better navigate life.
So how then do you balance, okay, who's right and wrong, I guess, in that situation, or the grey area in between? So obviously you have your own perspective in position 1. You want to see somebody else's perspective, say the other person you're having an argument with is, I guess, is position 2. And then position 3 is obviously the independent observer. that sounds quite a difficult thing to do, especially in the moment. When you're having an argument with someone, or you find yourself, wondering what to do.
So there's two things I'd like to say to that. Number one, it's not about being right or wrong. That's very black and white. There's very black and white. Life is not black and white.
No.
It's very grey. So you don't go into it going, right, so I'm going to prove that I'm right. You go into it thinking, I want the best possible outcome. NLP is all about win-win, not win-lose, but lose-lose, win-win. That's the first one. The second thing is you don't do it in the moment, because your emotions are going to be like up here.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be away from the situation to do it by yourself. It's like what we said about, going on a day date. You don't sit in your house and do it, because you're going to be distracted by the stuff in the house. Take yourself away somewhere so that you have space. And that's the same with this. You don't do it when it's happening, because you can't see the wood from the trees. You do it away so that you've got space to yourself, and that you've allowed the emotions to die down, and you've got a better perspective on what's happening.
Okay, that makes sense. So just stepping back to confidence, what do you do in this situation, say in the room that you mentioned earlier, where the facilitators said, "Oh, Chris, I want you to speak about your business in 30 seconds." And I'm like, what's the best thing to do to just sort of calm yourself down and then exude that confidence? Just speak and do it well.
Okay, so you want to try and overcome the rabbit in the headlights.
Yes.
Breathing.
I thought you might say that.
Breathing. All you need to do, if it is, Chris, it's your turn now to stand up. You can either put your hand on your heart and take 3 deep breaths in, or your hand on your belly, or even just one, just a really big, and then stand up. By the time actually you've said your name and I help people do X, Y, and Z, 15 seconds is already gone.
Yeah.
And don't think of the time, because it's funny when we say you've got 60 seconds or you've got 5 minutes, talk about yourself. Some people, take 1 minute and then go, oh my word, I still got 4 minutes. Other people, they're still talking after 10 minutes. So,
Absolutely.
Time to people feels different.
Yeah, it can feel very much different at the start as what it is at the end. I might think, okay, I'm done in 1 minute, and then go talk for another 9 minutes because I've still got 5 minutes to stare. It's quite interesting. Well, Maria, it's been really, really insightful. We've talked about confidence from a number of perspectives, but I guess what would be your underlying message to everybody? If they took one thing away today, what would it be?
As soon as you asked me that question, the first thing I thought is confidence isn't what you do, it's who you are. So work on yourself first, and then the external stuff will be easier to deal with.
So if people need some help working on themselves, how do they find you?
Oh, literally, I am everywhere on social media, Chris.
Mummy on a break.
Well, type Maria Newman into your search engine, probably Google, and you'll find me on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and my website will probably come up as well. And then just send me a message. Let's have a chat. Let's start the conversation.
And you work with people all over the globe.
Yes. Time zones could be a limiting factor. However, yes, geography isn't really an issue.
Because you only work online, actually. That's an important point. You do only work online.
I do.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Maria. I really appreciate you joining us today on Muhami Matters and giving us such insightful advice and information. There's a lot to reflect on, and I think I've learned a lot. I'm going to go and do some serious reflections after this. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
To our audience, if you've got any questions for Maria, you'll be able to find the links to her socials and her other contact details in the comments. Huge thank you to her again for joining us and sharing her practical insights on confidence, the inner critic, and navigating difficult professional conversations. If you did enjoy today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your network. And for more insights and support, visit muhami.ae or connect with me at CJA Consulting. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and be confident. Thank you for joining us on Muhami Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, subscribe and connect with me to stay updated. Join me again soon as we continue to bring you credible insights, practical strategies, and trusted advice to empower your professional journey. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.